Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inspirational Anna Show, the show that aims to inspire you, educate you, and bring the best out of you. I'm excited about today's interview because it goes right to the core of my very being. It goes to the core of who I've become and who I promise to be as I follow my guest today. But before we do that, here is a poem that speaks about true leadership, what I find in my guest today. And it's called A True Leader. A true leader is not just one who leads, but one who inspires, guides, and heeds the call of duty, the weight of responsibility to serve their people with humility. They do not seek power for their own sake, nor do they resort to force or fake their way to the top, for they know that true leadership comes from below. They listen to the voices of the people and work to address their needs and ripple effects of policies, actions, and decisions for the betterment of their nations. They lead by example with integrity, honesty, and transparency in entirety, for they know that their actions speak louder than words. And that's what makes them prouder. They inspire others to be their best, to strive for excellence, and never rest in pursuit of their dreams, their goals, to make a difference and touch souls. So let us honor the true leaders, those who lead with their hearts, their readers, those who inspire us to be better, to do more, to make the world a better place than before, by Mohammed Muzamil. And I found this poem so inspiring, and it speaks to the core of our guest today, who is Professor Sefa Dei, a man that I have followed for years and years. And I continue to see him, to look at him, and to almost take every step as he takes it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor Sefa Dei. Hello, Prof.
Hi. Thanks.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot.
I thought that poem spoke so well about you, your
Mhm.
humility, your leadership, your focus, and your touch that is affecting all of us in various corners, both here in Canada and Ghana. And every time I say, I'm interviewing Professor there, people are like, wow, how do you get him? I'm like, don't worry, he's my uncle. So welcome
Yeah,
to the show, Prof. I'm
yeah,
grateful that you decided to come on and educate us a bit about what you do,
yeah.
right?
No. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I mean the words that you spoke, right? It makes me humble, right? I think um, I see you also as a role model, right? For our community, that people will look up to you, and for when somebody who is seen as a role model to also see somebody as a role model, I think that's very important, and I do appreciate that. In that, and I'm glad.
Thank you.
I'm glad to be on this show. I've always wanted to be on this show, but it's just the time.
Now you're making me feel, I'm going to cry, Prof. But I am telling you, words cannot explain the effect you've had on in my life. Of course, you or Fayao,
Mhm.
were at the forefront when I was coming in.
Yeah.
At the time, there were very few Black people from
Mhm.
Ghana that I could
Mhm.
see in a leadership role. But
Right.
the two of you saw me, you encouraged me. And
Yeah.
I also want to congratulate you on you receiving the 2023 President Impact Award.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Your impact is beyond words. Now,
Thanks.
let me read something that I read here. It says, this award recognizes and celebrates University of Toronto faculty members whose research has led to significant impact beyond academia. Professor Dei, a Royal Society of Canada Fellow and co-founder of the Center for Integrative Anti-Racism Studies, is being recognized for its influential work advancing anti-racism, race and equity, anti-colonial thought, and African indigeneity in education, and its sustained impact on policies, practices, and advocacy for inclusive schooling and Black and racialized youth educational success in Canada and internationally. I have goosebumps. But these words, a lot of times we read about people and the words impact us. In reading this, I know that my work has to continue just like yours is continuing. But before we go any further, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was born and I grew up in Ghana, right?
Right,
We grew up in the we in all Ghana. You have a extended family, so
right,
everybody keeps in, right? But I used to have my mom and dad. But our dad died when we were very, very young. In fact, I
okay,
remember when I went to Ghana National College at Cape Coast, the first year, the first term, I didn't come back home to see my dad. He passed away, right? So
oh,
it was my mom who looked after. Heard uh, when on the way when I heard that we were going to the funeral of my dad, it was a shock because I thought it was actually my mom because I knew my
mm,
mom to be the sickler, right? I
right,
knew that my mom was always sick with the stomach and that. So when later I heard that it's actually we're going to a funeral for your dad who's just passed away, it was even more shocking to me.
mm.
But the strange thing is that when our dad died, he took away my mom's stomach sickness. It never came back.
It never came
It
back.
never came back. My mom also came to Canada. I brought her here to Canada, and she passed away in Canada here, and I had to take her. Yeah, we had to take
Oh,
her back.
really?
Yeah, we had to take her back home to bury her.
How long ago was
Oh,
this?
that's we'll be celebrating the 10th year in 2 years, so it's 8 years ago, right?
Did she fall sick when she came?
Yeah, she was at the nursing home, and then we had she tripped or something, and that, right?
Okay.
So I mean, it's just yeah, but like I mean, the point is that my mom has been our bedrock. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we became everything to her, and she became everything to us.
Right.
And that. So growing up, right, in Ghana, and then going to school, and then I got a scholarship after my first degree at Legon to come to do my master's at McMaster University.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 8 years, 8 months, sorry, 8 months of my master's at McMaster, and then came to Toronto for my doctorate.
Okay.
I obtained my doctorate in 1986. I'm sure many of your listeners, some of them may not have even been born.
No.
Yes, right. So I've been a professor, a tenured professor at University of Toronto since '91. Right,
Wow.
since '91, I became assistant professor in '91, associate professor in '94, and in '96 I became a full professor. Right. So
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
and,
Now, now, so you're being a professor,
mhm,
you didn't just leave it in the classroom.
no,
You've tackled issues
right.
that at the time were not being tackled,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
I know what it's like to
yeah,
be a first to
yeah,
do certain things,
yeah.
right? How difficult was it? And
No,
how did you see to
yeah,
attach the two,
yeah.
being very community
Mm-hmm,
focused and as well the classroom?
mm-hmm,
How did you do that? Because you could have easily just been a professor
yeah,
and professored your way all the way through your life.
yeah.
But
No,
yours is different. Tell me
yeah.
how all that happened.
No, that's a very important question. I think, look, we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think if you look at our community, for example, right? I'm talking here about the larger Black community, not necessarily the Ghanaian community, the
Right.
larger Black community, right?
Right.
We have those who had gone before us, who people like Dudley Laws, Charles Roach, who really
Mm-hmm.
fought, right, to have Black voices be heard, right?
Heard.
And one of the things when I came to the university, I realized that, look, I became a member of the Organization of Parents of Black Children, where the Black mothers, right,
Mm-hmm.
were asking me to do something that would be
Okay.
relevant to their community, relevant to their
Right.
community. Because when I was hired, there was all this hoopla about, well, Audrey has hired an African and that, and there was a,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's what I mean.
right. And so for me, the Black mothers telling me, make yourself relevant. Uh,
Mm.
that we do have a lot of scholars who are detached from the community.
Right.
That sent a powerful message to me, and I
Right.
realized that they would have my back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember when my life was threatened at the University of Toronto, the Black Secretariat, right, made sure that, look, nothing is going to happen to me without them holding the university accountable,
Responsible.
responsible, right? And that. So it didn't take long for me to realize that we need to be community grounded. We need to be community
Mm.
grounded because
Mm.
it's the community that supports us, right?
Yes.
Our work has to be relevant to the community. We cannot put our communities under the bus. We
Mm.
cannot just simply look at, like we said, professorial your way into academic.
So thy kingdom
No,
come.
no, exactly. And I think what we do has to be relevant, right? So
Mm.
when we, for example, my study on dropout or push out, right, which I did with my graduate students, Josephine Mazuka, Jasmine Zain, who is now a professor herself, and Marsha James, right, others, right. When we did that study,
Mm-hmm.
right, it was propelled by the community concern about
Okay.
students, Black students being pushed out of the system.
Right.
It didn't mean that students shouldn't take responsibility for that problem, but
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about how the system was designed in such a way that some students don't find themselves included, right?
Right.
They find themselves disengaged, right?
Right.
And that's the process of dropping out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's not somebody just simply holding their hand and say, go away from the system, but the messages that are sent, the fact that the curriculum doesn't speak to their experiences, the
Right.
fact that their histories are not validated, the fact
Mm-hmm.
that their knowledges don't matter, their experiences, their voices don't count, were all powerful messages that give them a sense that they don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Black mothers were concerned about that, right, and said we need to understand the problem, can we
Right.
put some focus on that so that we understand the problem?
Right.
To me, a launch pad for me for my academic career and making sure that I'm grounded in the community, right, and grounded in the community, and that the community at the end of the day is the one going to hold your back when
Exactly.
you're under attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, in academia, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
talk about these issues, race, racism, and that it's like a target. I mean, all of
Yes.
us who do this work will have stories to tell. The number of times our lives have been threatened, people send emails to the university saying we should be kicked out of the university because
Right.
about racism, and sometimes even within our own community. Because
Yes.
I remember at one time when my life was threatened and OZ building was shut down, right? You couldn't come out through the subway. You had to come out through the main entrance. So there was
Mm-hmm.
one entrance that people could come in, right? And one person who actually happened to be a Ghanaian went into the building and didn't understand why everything had been shut and they had come through just the main entrance. And then somebody told him, there's a Ghanaian professor here whose life has been threatened. That's why they're taking precautions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I had? I was told that person said, "Oh, but here when you come to somebody's land and you don't keep your mouth shut, that is going to happen to you, right?" I mean, this is the thing, right? And we still have some of these people around, right? People who think that, oh, we should just simply be quiet, right? We have a responsibility to speak out.
Thank
We have
you.
a responsibility to make this community better than we
Thank
came
you.
to meet it,
Thank
right?
you.
Have that responsibility, and we cannot simply say, "Well, I'm here to work, get my money, raise my family," and that. If those before us did that, we
Where
wouldn't
would
be
we
here.
be?
We wouldn't be here, right? And it's in fact very important for us to recognize that it doesn't mean that you don't build communities. You
Mm-hmm.
build allyship. You have friends. You work together. They can be indigenous. They can be Asian. They can be black. They can be continental black, African, and so forth. You build those communities, But my point is that we need to speak out and speak out, right?
Amen.
Those are very, very powerful because
I like that.
any community is as good as we collectively work to make it, right?
Amen.
We want
Hmm.
to make Canada good. We want to make Canada better, and we all have a responsibility to make it.
There
And
you
part of
go.
the way of doing that is that we speak out against injustice, we speak out against oppression, we speak out against violence, whether it's gender violence, whether it's sexual violence, whether it's violence around disability or social class. We speak out all those issues. We speak about them and that.
I am so honored that as the mothers spoke and as the mothers cry, we'll say it was a cry for help. You found it necessary, you found it your duty to step up to the plate and to speak so that things could take effect. The thing about it is, as you were doing that, you were younger then, right? My, my question to you is, as you were stepping up to the plate, were you not afraid? As you were stepping up to the plate, who guided you? For example, when I talk about me participating
Mhm,
in community, I mentioned you, I
mhm.
mentioned Ofayao, I
Right.
mentioned Dr. Lakumi. These are the people that I
Mhm,
saw,
mhm,
right? That come from Ghana,
mhm.
Jean Augustine as well.
Right.
So that gave me a sort of light because
Mhm.
in Ghana, you see so many people that you want to
Yeah.
be like. But when
Yeah.
you come here, it's a different story.
Yeah.
So at the time, when you seem to be the only, let's say, Ghanaian, at least from what I know, I don't know about others,
Mhm.
were you not afraid? And what is it that kept you going?
Yeah, I think look, we talk about look, once you build communities, right? You know people have your back,
Right.
right? And so for me, I use the whole notion of building communities within schools with my students, right? My students became my strongest supporters, right?
Okay.
So that way, you cannot, so, for example, touch George without the students being touched, right?
With
So
that
that
being
is
said,
that,
right.
right? And then I talk about the larger community, right? The fact that you have the
Mm-hmm.
black community, the black secretariat, right? The organization
Mm-hmm.
of parents of black children saying that we have your back, right? Covered,
Okay.
right? And then you had those people I could also learn from, people like the Laws, Charles
Mm-hmm.
Roach, right?
Yes.
Stalwarts of the
Right.
community, Ekwe Benjamin and others, right? Who were
Right.
fighting, right? Who were fighting about questions about police brutality, violence,
Mm-hmm.
and, and,
Mm-hmm.
and all that, right? So you have all those people to learn from, right? Leonard Farrell, right? And others. You had all these things, these people to learn from as well, right? And that. So
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
me, the fact that you cultivate a community, you are part of a community, right?
Right.
It in many cases shields you
Mm-hmm.
against any concerns about fear and worry. Of course,
Okay.
a cuckoo person can do anything they want, but then you also know that with the, the guidance of the Almighty, right,
It's behind you.
with our ancestors and the support of our community, you have a community that protects, right? And
Amen. Amen. So it says here, Professor Day is considered as one of Canada's foremost scholars on race and anti-racism studies, African indigeneity, and anti-colonial thought. When we say race and anti-racism, what does that mean?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very good question. All right, look, race is part of our identities, and unfortunately, some people sometimes deny it. Race is also just the way we talk about gender, just the way we talk about sexuality, just the way we
Mhm.
talk about class, right?
Okay.
And I think we should be able to talk about race. The issue why we should talk about race is that race has been an identity that has been used to
Mhm.
oppress and to
Right.
suffocate, right?
Right.
So we
Mhm.
cannot put it away. We need
Yeah.
to talk about it. But we talk about racism and how it intersects with sexism, classism, homophobia, transphobia, and so forth, right? So race is part of our identity. We are not all about race, but race is one of our identities. Just as we have class, just as we have gender, just as we have sexuality, right? And then also the question about racism, right? You can't
Mhm.
talk about racism without talking about race, right? When we talk about racism, racism comes in different forms, right?
Mhm.
You have anti-black racism, we have anti-indigenous racism, we have anti-Asian racism.
Right.
Even within the black community itself, We
Right.
can internalize the tropes of racism and
True.
revisit it on us, whereby somebody from the continent may think he or she is superior to somebody from outside the continent, or vice versa, right?
Right.
In this sense, we need to talk about, we are all implicated in that, right?
Yes.
So when I hear the current concerns about, well, we shouldn't be talking about race. Look, we are not in a raceless society. What we
Yes.
should talk about is that just because somebody is black doesn't mean he or she is inferior.
Right.
Just because somebody is white doesn't mean he or she is superior.
Right.
So as others have talked about, what we need to emphasize is that it is not the color per se that is the problem. It is the interpretation that we put on the color that is the problem.
It is the
Look,
interpretation.
yeah, that we put on the color. Just because somebody is black means inferior. That is a problem, right?
Hmm.
I don't want somebody to see me and say, I don't see any color. That's an insult, right?
Right.
I don't want you to walk in the room and say, I don't see any color. That's an insult,
It
right?
is.
The problem is not the color. It's the
Hmm.
fact that you put interpretations on the color. That is the problem. So we
Hmm.
have to disassociate the meanings that we have, right, around that.
Right.
Doing that doesn't mean you put it in a closet and not talk about it, right? We
Hmm.
have to talk about it, right? We have to talk about it because I mean, as Africans, as black people, right? Part of our identity is that we have been racialized.
Yes.
We have been racialized, and we need to talk about it. What are the processes that we have been racialized, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
part of those processes is not just about oppression, but it's also about how we resist
Hmm.
oppressions, right?
Right.
And we do this resistance in collectives, right? We create communities and resist together, right?
Right.
These communities are about black, Asian, white, indigenous working together to resist racial oppression, right? And that's how we should talk about these things in that. So
Awesome.
to me, it's when people talk about look, we have a colleague, right? Molifia Santi. I mean, maybe some of your listeners may know him. He's an Afro scholar in the US, right? He
Hmm.
talked about a long time ago when Europeans were going to Africa for people, right? Uh, they knew who they were going for. They knew they
Hmm.
were Africans. They knew
Yeah.
they were Africans, and they racialized them to go for them, right? But
Hmm.
these people were farmers, they were fishermen, right? They were traders. They had
Yes.
their dignity and they had their humanity,
And
right?
they had their understanding of themselves.
Yes, right. So through that process of middle passage, right, when they were dehumanized, right,
Hmm.
we need to talk about that. The process through which these bodies became dehumanized, right,
Hmm.
and how those processes sometimes can reproduce themselves in different ways.
And
Yes,
they
yes,
are reproducing
yes.
themselves.
In
Every
contemporary time,
day, as I become more and more enlightened,
yeah,
I see that, oh my goodness, even amongst blacks,
yeah.
you can see it if you
We
pay
internalize
attention to
it.
that.
We internalize it.
Yes, yes,
We internalize it. Well, you are from Ghana, so you are better than somebody from Nigeria, or vice versa, right?
exactly. Or
Or
you're light
you are
skinned, so
Ashanti.
you're better
Yes,
than the darker
yes.
skin.
Or you are Ashanti, so you are better than an Ewe, or vice
Yeah,
versa, right?
yeah,
Or you are light skin, so you are better than the darker skin, right?
yes,
These are things that we have internalized and we need to challenge it because we create the culture of hierarchies. It's a culture of hierarchy. Who is
right,
up, who is down, rather than
right.
see us as a community, right?
Hmm.
And the way we see that, the way we address that, it's not to be silent on these issues, but to talk about them and call people on it when we see it. That over our kitchen tables, when we see that on TV, certain bodies play certain roles, right?
Hmm.
And certain
Hmm.
bodies are stereotyped. We need to
Yes,
talk about that. We need to talk about that with our children over the kitchen table so that they don't go
yes.
to school feeling very inferior.
Feeling
We need to empower
inferior.
them. We need to empower them that, you know what? I have a culture, I have a home, I have a family, I am a human. And you need to empower them. The only way you empower them is to make sure that they don't negate any aspect of their identity. They must be proud of it.
They must be proud of it
They
is
must
an
be proud of it.
understatement because sometimes even when you look at us, those of us from, I can only speak on Ghana. Remember how, like, if you spoke English, you were seen as
Yeah,
better than the person
yeah,
who spoke the local
yeah,
dialect. You
yeah,
know, it didn't occur to me until I came here that that was all part of
Yeah.
changing people's aspects about
Yes.
themselves
Yeah.
and all of that. There was a time when we didn't even want to wear our traditional clothes.
Yes.
We would be laughed at if
Yes.
you wore your traditional
Yes.
clothes, or you will be seen as an uneducated person, right? And these things continue to live on in our minds. So, like you're saying, we cannot stop talking about what we see.
No,
And it says here, yes, go ahead, I'm listening.
when I came to the University of Toronto, right, in the 80s, right,
Yes.
was a sign on the notice board at the cafeteria, right, that international students who wanted to change our accents, we can pay $20 at the time and
Wow.
enroll in speech language classes to change our accents. My God,
Wow.
I'm so glad I
Change
didn't
it
have
to
20.
what?
And yes, I'm so glad I didn't have $20 at that time. Maybe I would have done it, but
You would have paid.
I'm so glad I didn't do it. Right? It's part of my identity, the way I speak. Right? I need to speak clearly, but I need to speak with my accent because we all have our different accents,
Yes.
and we need to acknowledge that. We need to be proud of that. Right? We shouldn't be wearing somebody's identity. We shouldn't be wearing somebody's what they want us to be. We should be our true, authentic self.
I
We need to
like
be
that. We
our
should
true,
be our true, authentic self.
right.
And the beauty, as with technology and everything coming up, is how we're all beginning to understand what's going on. We're all beginning to see the beauty of our Africa, of our Black race, and more, we're seeing that people are playing a role in their little corner to showcase the story and to tell the story. You have been a leader for us, and we continue to march on. It says here he has 40 books and over 70 referred journal articles and numerous national and international awards to his credit. Dear Lord, Prof, how have you written 40 books? And why do you find the need, right, to continue to write? You
Well,
know,
yeah. Couple of
yes.
things. I like writing, right? But I also like writing in collective, right? And some
Okay.
of my books are written with my students, right?
Okay.
Yeah, they're sent. I mean, I do have solo-authored books, but I do write a lot with my students and also sometimes with my colleagues. I also
Mhm.
want to write with African university faculty, right? I do some of
Right.
the books I write with. It's a way of mentorship, right? That I think
It's a way of
you have
mentorship.
a
Yeah.
mentorship to mentor and that because when you mentor somebody, you the mentor, you the mentor, you are being mentored, right?
Oh,
Mentorship,
man.
it's
It
a
is such a good feeling.
right. I always talk about my students. My students have been my best mentors, right?
Yes.
Challenge me, they ask me questions, I listen to them, and I hear them in classroom. I take the ideas and I work with the ideas, right? So I'm part of that mentorship and that. So when you work in a collective, you're able to do more, right?
You're able to do more.
Yeah,
Do you find it interesting when your students sort of challenge your thought process and you
oh
go
yes,
back and forth with them?
yeah.
Do you find it interesting? Does it feed you?
Yes, that's the thing I like about I teach graduate school, right? Uh,
Right.
I always is a graduate school, so the students are mostly masters and PhD students, and so
Okay.
it's not the formal lecture style. It's more like you are sitting at a table and so you see students challenge you, and I think it's very productive, right? Because
Yeah.
right when students take sometimes even when they disagree with you, right? They'll
Yes.
come out in a way that will make you think and say,
Hmm.
offering a different way of thinking around that. And if look, if we went to school with people who thought like us, we
Hmm.
might as well stay home, right? What are you going
Hmm.
to learn? Because everybody is going to think like, what do you want to learn? Because why do you want to go to school? Because
Right.
the people you are learning from, they're just like you, right? You
Yes.
go to learn because you have something to learn from others, right?
Yes.
So we need to create that space for people to challenge you, to open your mind, right? The whole idea
Yes.
about opening one's mind is that people are going to read the world differently. You see,
Yes.
the issue that we talk about is this, right? That in the space when we have people whose voices have to be heard, right?
Hmm.
There are certain voices that are not being heard because they're
Right.
not part at the table.
They're not at
Those
the
voices are
table.
missing from the table. That's what we are complaining about. That's
Right.
what we talk about inclusion, right?
Hmm.
That some voices are absent and we need to bring those voices. We are not saying push any voice away. They're
No.
saying those absented voices need to be made present. So we need to talk about inclusion in a way that centers every voice. We don't
Mhm.
want our kids to be in school where they think the classroom is not their space for them. The
And they
school,
don't see
yeah, they
themselves
don't see
anywhere.
themselves, that they have no ownership of the space. And that's what we talk about. That every student, every child must go into the classroom feeling they have a sense of responsibility because the school is their school. They have every
Amen.
right to be in that school. They have every right to make that school work. They have every right to speak out against injustice. They have every right to create a committee in the school. They have every right to respect their teachers, to respect their other learners, their peers, right? This is the essence of creating communities. You know, sometimes people talk about it takes a village to raise a child, right? The African adage. I
Yeah.
always, I always say people they just say I don't think they understand it.
No, I think people just say
Yeah,
it.
because you see, when we say it takes a village to raise a child, we know that it takes a community to raise a child. But that's not what that proverb is saying. No, of course, we all know that it takes
We
a
all know that, yes.
yes to raise a child. What the proverb is saying is that you need to create a community in the first place. That's what it is saying. You need to create a community in the first place in order to raise a child. When we
Beautiful.
are at each other's throats, right? When we are not getting along, when there's so much division, when there's so much tension, how can you raise a child? It's
Yes.
like the home. When there's so much disunity in the home, when there's so much anger, when there's so much violence, when there's so much this one is up, this one is down, how do you create the peace and the stability to raise the family?
That
That's
child.
what you're talking about, right? That's what it means. And we need to build communities. We all have a responsibility to build those communities. We all have a
Awesome.
responsibility to build those
And
communities.
so, the other thing I was thinking the other day is that why don't we realize that when everybody is at the table, society becomes better? Why is that difficult to
Yeah.
understand?
And it's a
So
question of power.
it's a question of power. But when is that power? When are those people in power going to understand that when we bring everybody to the table, like you're saying, then we have different perspectives as a group. We're able to come to a middle where everybody feels included and supported to play their part.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making any
No, you're
sense.
making sense. You're making sense. And I think that the point is that I think, look, sometimes you see this is what education is about. People see because sometimes people would critique without understanding what people are saying, right?
Yes.
So people
Mhm.
criticize, oh, this people they're always making noise, they're always
They're always
making
talking.
talking, right? When they don't really understand why people are talking, right?
Mhm.
So the point you're saying is this precisely when people talk about this, they're talking about that we need to use power in such a way that is shared, right?
Shared power.
Yes, shared power, right?
Shared power.
Yeah, because that's how we create communities. Because everybody then develops a sense of agency, right?
Mm.
That
Mm.
nobody thinks that they are powerless, that they have that agency, that they can use their power to make a difference in their
Yes.
lives,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
this is why this idea has to be ingrained in people's thoughts, right?
Mhm.
That having power is just one thing, but what you do with that power is the
With that
most important.
power.
Yeah,
With
the
that
most
power.
important thing. How do you use that power to create, to open the door for everyone to enter it, right?
So,
How do you,
now that you're talking about power, right? And I always say this, one person cannot do it alone.
no,
So I want you to speak to the fact that each person has to step up to the plate one way or the other.
yeah,
You know,
no. There's a saying that if you give people power, they take it,
yes.
right? If you give people power, they take it. We also know that people sometimes simply take power. They assume they exploit power. We know that. But I
Mhm.
think the whole question about power, right, is that we need to talk about power in such a way that is asymmetrical. In other words, it's relational,
It's
right?
relational, yes.
Relational, right? It doesn't mean that look, we all must have, say, equal weighted power.
Right,
Obviously, there must be a principal,
right,
there must be a teacher, there must be a student.
right.
How do we talk about relational power? That the principal, the teacher, and the student are in relational power dynamics, right? Where they use their power to support each other, right?
Mhm.
Where the student feels they have a sense of responsibility to respect authority,
Yes.
They have a sense of responsibility to respect their peers,
Right.
friends,
Mm-hmm.
where the teacher also feels a sense of responsibility to teach the learner,
Mm.
to share knowledge.
Yes.
And the principal has a responsibility to lead, but
Right.
to lead also learning
Right.
by following. That
Right.
leadership flows from the ground. That
Mm.
leadership is not something from the top that you lord it over somebody, but
Over
you build
somebody.
it. You build it together in that. And that's the sense of how we talk about these things, right? And I'll
Yes.
give you an example of the way sometimes it plays out. We talk about success, right?
Mm-hmm.
Individual success, right? First of all, when we talk about success, right? Success is never individually created.
No.
Success is never individually created. Success is collectively created. If Anna, you are smart, if Nana is smart, it's not because everything all resides in our
In
head.
your head.
We learn from others. We learn from our teachers. We learn from our friends. We learn from our parents. We
Mm-hmm.
learn from our mothers in that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this success has been collectively created.
Yes.
Need to enshrine that in that. The other part about the success is that success doesn't have to be simply academic. It is also social.
Mm.
Right? Because sometimes
Mm.
you can have a student who is very good on the test course. They'll get A plus.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to community interrelationships,
Nothing.
they're very lousy. They don't even do any community work.
Yes.
Right? So success has to be academic and also social,
Mm.
right? And we cannot use the success of some to explain the failure of others,
Of others.
right? Because we didn't all come to the table from the same
From the
goal.
same place.
Yes,
Right.
right? History, our histories are connected, but our histories are also different
Mm.
in that our journeys, how we got to where we are, I mean, how you got to where you are, Anna, it's different from how I got to where I am. It
Exactly.
doesn't mean that you are better and I'm less.
But we
All
can
that is
learn from each
yes,
other and encourage each other and support each other.
exactly.
Now, talking about community involvement, right? So you are the chief of, can you please? I don't want to make a mistake
Yeah. Okay.
because
So,
I know people are listening
yeah.
and I know I want people to get everything on point.
Yeah.
So, but don't worry, viewers. Like I said, he's my uncle. Every time I call him, he'll come if he's
Yeah. No.
available.
No. No. Don't worry. I'll come. No. But yeah.
So tell us
Yeah.
about being a chief. Like I said, you could have been a professor till thy kingdom come, but here in Canada, you've participated in speaking up, supporting our youth, creating all sorts of programs and policies and whatnot to make the lives better. At the end of the day, even though you work to bring up Black kids, you also work with everybody to make whatever you're doing successful.
Yeah.
Now, let me understand how and why you chose to become the chief. Now, whether you chose it or not, I don't want to mess it up. Please tell us the
Yeah.
story.
Well, a couple of things here. One is, I think to me, it's an honor to be a traditional chief, right?
Are you kidding me?
It's an honor, and I think
Isn't anybody
sometimes,
looking for a queen?
yeah, sometimes I tell people that even take away the prof. When I go back home, right, I say call me Nana, don't call me the prof. I prefer
Don't
the
call
title
me prof.
because it's an honor and being it's like it's a venerated status, right? In that,
Right.
right. My position is the Jackson here of Ascori Kufudo in the New Japan traditional area, right? But for most of the time, I serve also as the regent,
Okay.
regent of the town, right? But
Okay.
when the main chief is particularly is away in England, right? And he happens until recently he'd been in England. So anytime I go, I basically as the regent, I act as the
Okay.
regent in that. The role is very important because I think it connects us with communities and it connects us with our ancestors, right?
Hmm.
I think when we meet at the palace when I'm in Ghana, right? I think people bring their disputes and we help to settle amicably, right?
Right.
There's an indigenous and traditional way that we settle our conflicts, without
Right.
taking everything to the court, right?
Right.
We have arbitration. We try to bring peace and harmony. We also want to give advice, right? One of the roles that I play in my community, for example, is around youth education, right?
Hmm.
I think being an academic myself, right? Many of the youth in the town see me as somebody who has a responsibility also to promote education, right?
Right.
So I use my status in the area of promoting education. I think what I do sometimes is that when I get resources, right, there are times when sometimes I would teach a course, and some when I get some money or when I do speaking engagements and I get some funds, I try to make sure that it's some of that is put at the benefit of the youth, right? Where
Okay.
whether you get them computers or when they are organizing something, you support that, or when they are
Right.
to organize an event, you help them.
Right.
So that is part of it. But I think at the end of the day, though, is the traditional responsibility where you become a mouthpiece. You are able to take people's concerns and be able to express them, articulate them, and that these days, of course, you need to be from the royal or the stool to become
Okay.
active. It's not everybody who does it, right? It has to be.
Okay.
Yes, it has
Okay.
to be. It has to be. So for me,
So it's
the-
a lineage thing.
yes, from the mother, I ascended to the mother side, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and there'll be about three or four, sometimes five siblings who are eligible. And these days, what people see is that they look for certain things like who is educated, who has a charisma, who can speak, and that they use those criteria to determine who
To
becomes
determine, yes.
right. And I think to me, it's an honor. I see it as it's a big honor.
I
Um,
think it is such an honor. I
yeah.
can just see you in the traditional chief stuff, speaking the language, because it's a whole different
Yeah, yeah.
feeling
Mhm.
when you sit and
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
into the language.
yeah,
It's like, one of the reasons when I go to my Ghana church here, it is the language, it is
yeah.
the music sung
Mhm,
in the language that just fills me up.
mhm,
So when you're what is I don't know what to say, but compare how do you compare being a professor in the classroom
mhm.
to being a
Yeah.
chief in the
I
palace?
was I always know you were going to ask this question, right? And this is the thing. I mean, some you see, look, for example, in the traditional uh, place, right? Sometimes you speak through the linguist, right? So,
Yes,
for example, when I serve as regent, you somebody will have to speak and have to speak through a regent to me, right?
right.
So sometimes that becomes very. We find that some uneasiness about somebody who is always talking about we need to talk about power and deal with yeah, right. But then it's again, like I said, it's how you use it, right? I
It's
think
how you use it.
it's the customary respect. I think we need to give respect to our elders, right?
Right,
That's how I see it, right? That
right.
I think it's nice when you walk along the street and people see you and they want to stand, right? It's nice.
Yes,
It's,
that's what I'm talking about.
I
So
remember, I
when
remember,
you
I remember one time there was one elder, and he tried to stand, and I said, "Oh, sit," and he said, I'm not standing for you, the person. I'm standing for the role and the position in which you
you're
occupy."
like, oh, okay, okay. Because there's some kind of honor and
Yeah,
some kind of dignity
yeah,
and some kind of high respect
yeah.
that comes through
Hmm.
when Nana comes along. So how
Hmm.
does it feel when you've gone and you spent time in the palace and you know how they say Nana now ne kasa no ukasa hweye," and that kind of thing. And then you come to the classroom and somebody's like, I don't agree with you.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, yeah, no. I think it's part of being humble, right?
It's part of being
Yeah,
humble.
be humble, be humble because there's a proverb that says the the arrogant sheep must know where to display its arrogance.
Okay,
It mustn't be in front of the butcher's shop, right?
right.
Because, when you display arrogance in front of the butcher's shop,
Something could go wrong.
go wrong. To happen to you, right? But I think to me is the sign of humility because I think the position of a chief is a venerated status, right? It's
Yes,
honor.
yes.
It comes to respect. People, the community trusts you, your family, your lineage trusts you. That's why they bestow that title on you, and and
Hmm.
and, that- and
Hmm.
you also have the blessings of the ancestors, right? And the
Yes.
blessings of the ancestors to make you humble. Then being
And you
humble,
do you truly feel the ancestors when you
Yes,
step into the
yes,
bowl? I
yeah.
have a
Oh, yeah. No,
feeling
no,
you
no.
feel it.
I'm deeply spiritual. I'm deeply spiritual. So
Mm,
I feel that I'm deeply spiritual, right?
nice,
Because
nice.
yeah.
So from the time you became chief to now, what are some of the successes you've seen in your town?
Well, no, I think one of the things is I think trying to get the youth together, also talking about questions of education, also offering the advice, also settling disputes, which normally would have ended up in the modern court system, right?
And dragged
Yeah,
on.
right. Yeah, in Dragon and create all that. Right. There's so but we are also doing it's more like a road, a path that is
Right,
not accomplished yet. It's more
right.
you're heading towards a
It's
road
in progress.
progress. Yeah, exactly.
Right, it's in progress.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that we haven't seen the best of you yet.
Yeah,
I
with
know.
God guidance. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, with God's guidance, because I find that the more you're using your mind, the more you're working with others, as you said, with your students as they challenge you and all of that, they bring you into the modern day,
Hmm.
way of thinking. Because where you started from at the time you went to university and became a professor is not the same today as it was before. So I have a feeling that you're being stretched, your mind is being stretched, you're learning more and more. And with all that knowledge, then Ghana, your town, now will raise young people
Hmm.
who, because of you, have seen where they want to be. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, no, I think that's the whole thing about mentorship, right? I think we have to make ourselves relevant and we have to make ourselves responsible. And I think when we talk about being a leader, being an elder, right? No, look, of course, age is about eldership, but eldership is more than age. It's about what you do, right? And how
Right.
you make yourself relevant to the community and that. We are not always going to be 100%. We all make mistakes all the time, right? And
Yes.
the ability to learn from our mistakes and always move forward and do the best that we can is very, very
Mhm.
important, right? So for me, I take pride on the fact that when I go into my community and say, the youth, we tell, look, Prof, when we grow up, we want to be like you, we want to be like that.
Mm.
I think it's very, and it's very empowering, right?
It
And
isn't empowering. It
yeah,
is so empowering.
it's very, very
And it
empowering.
feels good. It makes
Yeah.
you feel like with all your aches and pains, you've done something right.
Yeah, yeah, and also I think to me it also supports my academic work, right? Because one of the things I know is that I think to me I'm into African indigeneity, and African indigeneity is to talk about our indigenous customs, traditions, and that. So my role, right, currently, that's why part of the research that I do is also about understanding African indigenous ways of knowing, our ways of knowing, like
Mm.
our customary practices, our traditions, our histories, right?
Yes.
And to impact that onto contemporary learners, right? A kind
Right.
of project I'm doing, right, is around proverbs. How do we use African proverbs to teach our kids, even in the Canadian school system, right?
Oh my God, Prof.
Right? How do you, yes.
Are you creating a course for this? Because man,
Well, yeah, no, we have a book out there, and we a book out there, and we are working on another book with some of my students now, right, on the whole thing about elders' knowledge, right?
yes.
Because you see, we have to talk about how we talk about responsibility, how we talk about
Hmm.
accountability, how we talk about community,
Hmm.
mutual independence, how we talk about building relationships, how we talk about connections, making connections. And
Hmm.
our elders have a lot of knowledge to teach us around that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There's a lot that we can learn with proverbs, African proverbs, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
proverbs, you can say 1,000 words with just a short African
With
proverb.
just a short
Yeah,
sentence.
exactly. And when you go to an elder for an advice, right? I don't think the elder is going to say, "Here it is, take it and go."
No.
He or she is going to say, "Pull a chair and sit down." And
Yes.
when you thought you were going to get advice in 1 minute, he or she is going to spend about 1 hour telling
Talking.
you a whole story, right?
Sorry.
Right? Wanting
Yes.
you to pick from that story the lessons of life,
Yes.
the
And
lessons.
as you go, the
Yeah.
stories, what he
Yes.
said rings in your
Yeah.
mind
Yeah.
and you think it
Yeah.
through and all of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I miss that respect.
Exactly.
Sometimes I miss that respect of an elder when you come in front of an elder Come
yeah,
on, we need to do something.
yeah. No, no,
when
no.
you when you come in front of an elder, and there's a humbleness
Yeah,
that you must display
yeah,
because you're in front of an elder,
yeah,
so that you can listen, not only listen, but hear
yeah.
what the elder is saying.
No,
So, go ahead.
no, and I think that's one of the things sometimes we talk about when we talk about the question of the lack of respect that they suspect, even how we value our elders in our communities, right? We need to pay our attention to the vulnerability of our elders and respect our
Mm,
elders, and because of the wisdom, the knowledge that they have in their heads. When you respect an elder, when you value an elder, you can learn a lot from them, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I think elders, like I said, elders get their status not simply because of age, but it's also because how they comport themselves in life, right? Are
mm,
able to emulate it. So if you're an elder who is so oppressive, who is so punitive, who is so always looking down on the youth are not going to give you that respect, right?
no,
So it's a two-way street, right? I think if we want to cultivate that, then how we comport ourselves as elders, how we comport ourselves in relationship to the youth also becomes very, very important, right?
yes,
We have to
yes,
teach the youth, we have to steer them away from some of the social ills, right?
mm-hmm.
Some of the
And
ills.
how we even comport ourselves when we're with the youth, when
Exactly.
we're with them,
Yeah.
because they cannot just be left to their own ways of
Yeah.
doing things.
Yeah.
Because here in North America, they'll tell you, well, the enlightened, she's 18, he's
Mhm.
18, this and that. But the life is not that easy. Life
Yeah,
is.
no, and sometimes I think it's a sort of people misunderstanding, right? Look,
Mm,
youth, we must respect youth for their knowledge. We must respect them and give them voice, right?
mm-hmm.
Let them articulate their voice and concerns. Sometimes they have certain things to say about our society that we need to
Yes,
listen to, and that. But that's not the same as saying that, oh, well, just because of that, they have nothing to learn from elders, right? They
yes,
have a lot to learn from elders, just as elders can also learn from youth. It
from
has to be a
them.
two-way street, right? And I think we have to navigate the different cultures, right? Because
Mm-hmm,
our cultural values, right, are said that we are called a related status to our elders and our eldership, right?
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
because we know that it comes with knowledge and experience, right? There's the proverb that says, what a young person stood on a chair to see, the elder person just sat down and saw it all. Right? Right?
Way ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that we have to, right. And I think that's why when elders would talk to us in Proverbs, right? They would talk to us in Proverbs and that because they have wisdom, they have knowledge
Yes.
based on their long years of experiencing the world,
Mm-hmm.
and that we can learn. And that I think one of the things that, for example, our Ghanaian community needs to do and our African community needs to do is how we really teach our youth about our cultures, our traditions. I'm not saying everything about our cultures and traditions is perfect. No culture, no tradition is immune to criticism, right? But we
Mm-hmm.
cannot dismiss, we cannot throw away our cultures, our histories,
We
right?
can't.
We can't. I mean, one of the things I remember, and I did talk about this some time ago, when I remember there were times when you have some Ghanaian youth who will come here when they were about, say, they'll come to Toronto or Canada when they were about, say, uh, 12, 14, 16 years old. And then within a short span, within 13, 3 months, claim not to speak any Ghanaian language.
That was funny.
Yes,
That
it
was
is
funny.
funny, right? And I find it so very interesting, right? Look, the ability to speak multiple languages is actually a strength. It's an asset,
But you
right?
see, again, it goes back to when we started,
Yeah.
when our identities were
Yes.
being changed,
Yeah.
and all that. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you
Yeah.
got here, within 3 months, you don't speak Chi.
Yeah.
Really? Are
Yeah.
you serious?
Yeah.
And funny, it's funny. Even the grown people,
Yes.
grown ones,
Yeah.
want to say they don't speak
Yeah.
English. But,
Yeah.
Prof, you are an inspiration, not only, like we said, to the Ghanaian community, you are an inspiration to humanity itself,
Yeah.
right? Because of the touch you bring, the humility, the knowledge the power to speak so that society will listen, the power to speak so that change is affected. Before we go, tell us something for those of us who are striving and following in your footsteps. How do we find our courage? How do
Mm.
we keep going when you look up and it's almost as if you're alone? And like you were attacked and all of that before, tell us how you did it and how the
Yeah.
rest of us can do it.
Well, it comes back to my point about remaining relevant, right? Always,
Mm,
and also listen to your community, listen to your family, listen to your the groups that you identify with, right? And make sure that you're going to make a difference, right? Because sometimes, right, when the group acknowledges you, right,
mm,
it's more powerful, right? For me, look, I like many other people, right? We do get recognition awards from different groups, right?
right.
It's more valued when it comes from your own community, right? This is why
Mm,
my recent, and I know you know about this, right? The University of South Africa, right,
yes.
is going to confer a doctorate on me, right? That's an important honor. For I already have a doctorate, but the University of South Africa is going to give me another one, right?
Yes.
Because they think I've just
You've
been
done so much.
so much, right? I value that, right? I value that. It's a recognition. So remain relevant to your community, right?
Mm,
Persevere. Know that others have paved the way for you to be there, right?
yes.
And resolve that once you are there, you're also going to make sure that you pave the way for others to be there. Also, learn that you're going to make mistakes along the path, right?
Mm-hmm,
If you
mm-hmm.
didn't make mistakes, you're not human. You're going to make
No.
mistakes, right? But the good thing about mistakes is that it should be a learning moment.
Right.
Pick up your mistakes, you learn from them, and you move forward, right? And I think this is what we need to resolve to do. This is what we need to teach our children,
Mm-hmm,
right? Because Canada offers opportunities, but they must be able to take up these opportunities. And being able to take up the opportunities that Canada offers is being able to speak out when you are being denied what you is should be given to you. Being
yes.
able to speak out when your voice is being silenced. Being able to speak out when you are being marginalized because of your sexuality, because of your gender, because of your class, because of your race, because of your ethnicity, right? Being able to speak out on those things is what is going to make you true and authentic, right? Don't be like somebody else. Be your true, authentic self. Have your voice. Always,
Be your true, authentic
yeah,
self.
have your
Nana
voice.
Midasi.
Listen
Thank
to
you
that.
so much. You know, I could sit at your feet and listen and listen and listen to you. Can't talk anymore. But
Yeah.
our time is up. I will bring you back again because
Sure.
I know many people want to hear from you. And for me, for this platform, I hope to educate people. I hope to bring important people who have something to say so that others may learn, including myself, so that I may also be encouraged to continue on the journey. Nana, stay blessed, be encouraged, be inspired, and we'll be in touch soon. All right.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much. I appreciate this.
Yeah.
It's been a good hour with you. We need more. All right, folks, that was Professor Day with so much knowledge for all of us, not only those in the Black community, but everywhere for humanity itself. So take up your power, pick up a cause, champion it. Don't be afraid. Be encouraged, be inspired, and stay blessed. It's Anna. Bye bye. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye bye.